Sorry.
Ouch.
I don't know.
See this right here? This is found family, which is why you can get away with things like that. So, good evening, everyone. I am deeply honored to be here in community with you all. My name is Mindy Linder, and I'm a community engagement specialist for the Springfield Public Library and History Museum, which is part of the City of Springfield government. Welcome to this Illumination Community Forum on Freedom and Belonging in Oregon. This evening, we will explore the Latino, Black, and African American experiences through the lens of our upcoming 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Illumination is an annual community-led story collection project of the Springfield History Museum that centers and celebrates the history and contemporary voices of historically marginalized communities who are currently underrepresented in our museum collections. Each new chapter of Illumination is developed in direct response to requests from our local historically marginalized communities to address the harms of gatekeeping and erasure, as well as to celebrate and honor those undertold stories and perspectives. We then engage a local story collection team that has lived experience and affinity with that group. The team works to identify 6 people from this community and conducts oral history interviews and photographs them and any personal objects that hold significance to their journey. This material becomes an interactive storefront and digital exhibit at the museum in downtown Springfield. The culminating works become part of the museum collection and are available to the public, historians, and researchers. We currently have 4 Illumination collections that include the Latino collection, which features Mexican American and Mexican immigrant experience, the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander experience, the Black and African American experience, and the American Indian and Alaska Native experience. This next project chapter we are currently working on centers the lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, intersex, asex, and two-spirit, the LGBTQIA2S+ experience in Springfield and rural East Lake County. Here's a quote from a local Springfield parent raising a trans child in our community. Quote, "I know firsthand that visibility is key. My child would not have so confidently grasped their own identity if it were not for the visibility of others in the LGBT community. Similarly, our own visibility has helped others to come to accept the LGBT members of our own family, of their own family. I have seen the Illumination Project shine a light on many marginalized communities already, and it would mean a lot to further help normalize queer identities in Springfield in the same way." End quote. So this last year, we developed the first Illumination Advisory Committee, which is a coalition in response to community requests with 2 representatives from each of our existing Illumination collections. We also currently have story teams from each collection. Hola, buenos días, welcome. Please help yourself to food. Lo siento, mi español es muy mal, pero comido está ahí. Y también bebidas. So we also currently have story teams from each collection working on developing traveling exhibits for schools and other public spaces. So this here is the team who visioned these community forums and sought funding from the Oregon Humanities to bring the dream of these conversations into a reality. I'll pass it over to these extraordinary humans to introduce themselves and our incredible guest panelists this evening.
Buenas tardes. I already introduced myself. Antonio Huerta. I'm with Comunidad y Cultural. Absolutely thrilled and honored to be here. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mariela Germán Hernández con Escudo Latino y como una persona y residente de Springfield.
I'm Amy Yogi, and we did the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, exhibit in 2022 and 23. And we are in the process of growing our exhibit as we all are in our communities. So I'm so proud to be a part of this particular project. We are so inspired by what our panelists have brought forth. So thank you for coming.
Hi, my name is Irene Rashid. I worked on the Black and African American Illumination project. I was the writer for that project, and so happy to be here with all of you.
Hi, I'm Natalia here. I participated in the Black and African American exhibit years back. I've been excited to be here. It was a great moment in my life, and I look back on it fondly. So make some conclusions.
Do you want to mention? No, we have interpretation.
Antes de empezar, quisiera preguntar si hay alguien que prefiere información en español. Tenemos servicios de interpretación allá atrás, Kenia, y les puede dar un dispositivo para que escuchen en español. Sí. Entonces puede pasar con Kenia para que le dé un dispositivo. Y con toda confianza hay mucha comida, entonces cuando gusten servirse, adelante. Es la receta de mi tatarabuela. A ver si le gusta. I just want to make sure that people know that we have the interpretation part. So while they get ready, maybe we can get started.
So she'll be speaking after we ask the question, and then after the
You're doing
person.
simultaneous.
Oh,
So she's been talking the whole time.
okay.
Let's make it easier for her.
Okay. Okay, so we'll start with the first question for Mariela. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your connection to this community or to Oregon?
I'm gonna wait until interpretation is ready. Or maybe I will start in speaking English and then I will translate really quickly into Spanish if that's okay. Well, I grew up here in Oregon. My family migrated from Mexico. I think I was about 2 years when I arrived here to Oregon. This was back in 1994. So something that brings me really close to Oregon is that I just feel like home. This is my first home for me. Just being such a young little child, this is where home is for me. I lived in Springfield for several years, but I also lived in different parts of Lane County, including Creswell, Eugene, Lorain. Eventually, my family also lived at one point in Albany. But most of my life, I have lived here in Springfield, Oregon. And it really makes me feel like I belong there. Like that's the only place I recognize as my home. I grew up here, I went to school. All the people that I know are just people that live in my community, and I continue to see them at events. And I'm gonna now translate this in Spanish. Para mí, el estado de Oregon ha sido mi hogar, mi casa. Más que nada, mi familia migró de México en el 94. Yo tenía aproximadamente como 2 años. Así que Oregon me abrió las puertas y me dio esa bienvenida a mi hogar, a un lugar donde yo me identifico como que ese es mi único lugar donde yo he vivido. He vivido casi la mayoría del tiempo mi vida en el condado de Lane, en la ciudad de Springfield, pero también viví un tiempo en Creswell y también en Eugene, y también una temporada estuvimos viviendo en Albany. Así que Oregon es mi casa, es la única lugar que yo reconozco como mi hogar, donde yo crecí en comunidad, con amistades, donde fui a la escuela. Así que mis raíces están aquí. Así que Oregon es mi hogar.
Okay, the second question is, when you hear the words freedom or independence, what do they mean to you personally?
For me, freedom means that we have the right to be ourselves. Like that's what freedom is. And when we come to the word of independency, it's like we have the choice to do what's right, what we feel is right. You know, so that's what those two words mean for me. Freedom is just I get to be who I am, and then independence is I have the choice to make the right choices and represent myself. And I feel like sometimes in many other places, even in our home country, it's really hard to be ourselves. And not just I feel like in general, society is so hard right now to be who we are and be recognized and do what we like and we feel that's right to us.
Thank you. Okay, Natalia, can you share a little bit about yourself and your connection to this community or to Oregon?
Thank you. So I was born and raised in Springfield, Oregon. I still live there currently. And growing up, I didn't really have a community of people who were like me. And by that, I mean people who were Black. So it was really hard to feel a connection to Springfield, Oregon. My family is also fully white. Oh, okay, that sounds better. Okay. My family is also fully white, and so when I kind of realized that I was different, it was kind of hard for me to find a connection to this community. But once I grew older, especially going to high school, I realized that I needed to find this connection to Springfield, Oregon, and that's when I got more into like specific Black clubs and activities, and that's when I think that I actually made a connection to this community. Oregon is really dear to me because this is like my home. I've only been out of Oregon a few times, and so building a connection to it was so important for me. But yeah, I'm really big in the activity space in Oregon now. Not as much in college, but I'm getting to it. And yeah, I'm 19 years old. I go to UO right now. Joining the Black Student Union there in the fall. So.
Okay, and the second question, when you hear the words freedom or independence, what do they mean to you personally?
Freedom to me means the equal access to being able to express yourself, your identity, your culture, who you are, without pushback. And independence to me is being able to rely on yourself as well, without added hardship from other people. Right now, it's hard to feel like in the land of the free we have freedom equally, because we don't. So freedom to me is something that everyone should be able to have living in so-called land of the free, and part of my mission as a person is to make people feel more like they have more freedom, to give people more freedom eventually in life. Yeah.
Natalia, can you share a personal or family story that has shaped how you understand belonging or opportunity?
Yeah, so as I said before, I never really felt a connection to Oregon until I got into high school due to the fact that there was never really people who looked like me. in elementary school, there was about 5 other Black students, all within my grade, but none of us were really close. So when I got to high school, I was given an opportunity to go on to a conference in another state where I learned more about activism and how to become a better leader. And the feeling I got there, being around over 300 Black students who all had a community and felt complete to it, it kind of sparked something in me that I wanted to bring back to Oregon. This feeling of like a breath of fresh air almost, but I didn't want it to be temporary. So when I got back to Springfield, I went to, we have one Black teacher there, it's great, Michael Clint. I went to him about the BSU that he had been running. And what I did was I kind of came there one day when they usually meet, and there were about 2 other students in there. And we made a game plan to kind of promote the BSU for other students who were feeling the same way as us, where we didn't have a connection to our culture, we didn't have a connection to each other. And that was like my beginning of like my activism work. And I feel like that was the moment where I actually started feeling connected to Springfield as a Black person. And through that, I finally got my sense of belonging. And even though we were still really small, like 6 students on a good day, we were more confident, we were more happy. We had fun, and it was really successful. From the outside, it might not look like it, but even now, I feel way more empowered than I did before, just having that community for a few years. So that's how I kind of got my sense of belonging.
Yeah, I think that's something people don't recognize the Black community, right? Is there's just over 1% of the population is Black. And so a lot of Black children aren't even as lucky as you were to have 5 people in their whole grade level that's Black. They could go years without seeing a Black teacher. They could go days or weeks without being in proximity to another Black person. That can be really isolating. Can I ask you, was there a moment when you became more aware of your identity or how others see you?
Yeah, so growing up as a child, my family more kind of tried to shield me from the realities of racism in Oregon. And it wasn't until elementary school that I realized that I was different than other kids and different than my family. I had a friend in about 2nd grade, and I remember going over to her house and her parents meeting mine and trying to convince me that I was adopted. You know, there was no way my parents were mine because I had a Black family. I had a Black parent in the household. And in that moment, I was kind of stunned. And I was like, I feel like I look like my mom. I feel like I am her. So for someone to call that out to my face and try to convince me a different way because I'm Black, it was really weird. But things kind of changed after then. It was harder for me to like, I don't know, be myself. I kind of like crawled into a shell because experiencing racism as a child, not knowing what it is, because while my family meant good, being exposed to it, not knowing what it is, was really weird. It was just kind of like bullying, but I didn't really understand what the underlying reason was for it, that it was my skin tone. And after sharing it with my mom, she finally kind of felt nudged to tell me about racism in general. And I realized I had a lot more experiences that were like that I didn't know was racism before because of my skin tone. And I'm not mad about it now. I think there's a lack of education over here because there aren't more experiences with Black people that other people have. And so, like, ignorance isn't something I'm supposed to educate people on. However, I believe that people do have a right to change, and I had talked to that adult when I got older, which older was like, I don't know, 5th grade. And even though he didn't want to change, other people who gave me similar grief, I guess, kind of understood it from my perspective in a way. When I got older, I realized that I could say something back, you know, could explain my identity to it. But being aware of the race because of racism is kind of awful feeling. It doesn't make you proud. It doesn't make me proud, or it didn't make me proud back then, but you know, me being now, I'm very proud of it. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Mariela. Can you share a personal or family story that has shaped how you understand belonging or opportunity?
Well, I think first off, I'm the oldest of 8. So I think that my family really has brought me into being part of a big family and just being part of the community you belong to. And that's how I just grew up. You know, I grew up in a big community with my own family. And that really showed that I belonged in that space with my family. And as I grew and graduated high school and I went into college, I continued to see that in my community. You know, we were being recognized as Latinos, bilingual students, bilingual employees, and that really showed the importance of like belonging in our community. Just in Oregon, it was just really welcoming. And this is like, as I mentioned, as I got older, like high school years into college years, now as a mother of 4, I continue to see that. But for a very long time, I only knew what I only knew, right? As a very young child, I only knew that my family was my community who I gathered with. If I went to church, it was the same people who spoke Spanish that we would gather. If we had family events or community events, we just gathered. And that really felt like we belonged. Just being near each other and just celebrating mainly our culture in our holidays. So that's how I identify as being part of like a community and belonging to that. As I grew older, then I started seeing other perspectives of like, oh, I belong in the general community just for being bilingual, for being an active leader, for being a parent as well, and just supporting in every way I could and sharing events and resources in my community. That really felt like I belong in this community where I continue to share my knowledge with other people that I meet on a daily basis. And sometimes they don't even know about these resources or upcoming events, or they don't know where to find community, where they feel they're welcome, where they see their identity. So I feel like belonging is a big word, but I think that we all create our own space, and also our community creates those spaces for us.
I think that's really important what you said about you had that identity at home and you were able to go to church and other spaces where you saw other people who spoke in your language and shared your phenotype and things like that. And juxtaposition to what you were saying, which is I never saw Black people and I never had those spaces, and how differently you view belonging. That's so interesting. Was there a moment when you became more aware of your identity or how others see you?
Yes, I think I was more aware of my identity as Latina, a woman of color, when I was around 3rd, 4th grade. And I had this really bad experience, and that really brought me to like, what am I missing? So as you all know, I grew up here very young, and my first language was English for a very long time. And I spoke a few words of Spanish. And during my third, fourth grade year, I came across to this really like racist teacher, who pointed out to me that why did I not speak Spanish? That, you know, just being Latina, a person of color, that what was the reason behind that, that I didn't speak Spanish? But they didn't know that I grew up here in Springfield, in Oregon, and I was one of very few students who really had other peers. Like I could tell you that throughout my whole elementary school years, my whole family was the only family who spoke Spanish and were Latinos. So that really also brought me back to like, where do I belong? Where did I grew up? Well, I grew up in Springfield, where the majority of people who I communicate on a daily basis and go to school with are English-speaking people. And that's how I identify myself. Like, I feel like confident of like speaking that language because that's what I was taught that was all right. And my family didn't really push us to speak Spanish. Our family really were like, we understand you. We're also learning English, so yes, go do that. You know, that's fine in our household. For this one particular teacher to come up to me and start saying things to me in Spanish, and I had no idea what they were saying until later a cousin of mine picked it up and told my parents. That's when I became aware of like this racism between I can't speak one language or the other, and if I prefer one language for a different language, that looks wrong for me. That looks wrong for me to speak English, that I should be speaking more Spanish everywhere I go. So from there, I really pursued on learning more Spanish on my own. My parents didn't have time to teach me how to read, write, or how to even pronunciate certain words in Spanish. It's really difficult when you grow up just speaking English as your first language. So from there on, that was my pursuit to continue learning Spanish. And look, I'm bilingual, you know, you just pick it up, it's natural. But so many people always call you out for doing that, or speaking or prefer to speak one language or another. But many times I understood what my parents were saying to me in Spanish. I just prefer to speak back in English. And I feel like that's where my identity really kicked in. And then at that same time, we were moving from state. So we moved to Denver, Colorado. And when I got there, that was a big shock because everywhere you went, even to the closest Walmart, Dollar Tree, someone spoke to you in Spanish and greeted you in Spanish. So that was like, what is going on here, you know? And that was like, oh, here is the right place that I belong to. These are my people where I can be bilingual. I can also learn about where I come from, my roots, celebrate more like culturally appropriate holidays. And that it was recognized that yes, you could be bilingual and you could also be a person of color and pick to choose one language or another. And that was fine. Like there was no negative comments there. It was just like really welcome. You really belong there. And that's where I really started to see that, okay, I need to learn a little bit more of like what's going on in Springfield, Oregon, or just in general in Oregon, and what is going on here in Colorado. You know, everywhere I went in Colorado, it was just like, you're welcome. The people who look like me were like really nice, really friendly, and I didn't see that here in Oregon. Like I said, for a very long time, I want to say that my family was one of the few families that lived in Springfield.
Oh, I do have a question. So this is something I think I never thought about being a minority. Since I'm African American, people assume that I speak English, right? That a phenotype would make people think like you're less of an American, like you don't actually speak English or you shouldn't speak English, or the adverse that people within your own community that have the assumption that you could speak Spanish. I'm curious, did that experience people assuming whether for the bad or for the good, like, how did that affect you? Because that's something that has never occurred to me until you just said that. I think I even did it to you. I said, in your language was your second language, right? So just the assumption that that would be your first language, how does that make you feel? I'm curious.
I think now I'm more aware and I speak up and I say, well, hold on, let me give you a little background information. And I feel like that's really important, you know, just giving my own background experience and my lived experience that I could share. And a lot of people don't really know what they don't know until you start sharing. So I think that that's something that I continue to tell my kids very young. It's like, you need to speak up. You need to speak up and tell people what you can do and what you can't. And that people can make assumptions of us, but they don't know who we really are until they start meeting us or, you know, getting together with us and they learn about us. And I think that's something that it's really hard to see in the community, that I continue to see a lot of people that say, well, every person that's Spanish speaking is identified as Mexican. And that's one of the biggest things that I try to clarify in my community. Not just people from Mexico speak Spanish. You know, there's several other countries that speak Spanish, and there's a lot of Latino community or identities behind that word, Latino. And something that I continue to hear in my community, and I grew up listening, was like Hispanohablantes, Spanish-speaking community. Like that's also another identity. So it doesn't always reflect on what country you live or continent. It always depends on like what you can share from your personal experience. And that way people are more aware. And I feel like that's knowledge. Like that's knowledge, but you're also educating in a respectful way. And yeah, it's really hard to listen. And I continue to see that even as a parent, when I'm speaking with my kids in Spanish, whether I'm at the grocery store, people think that I don't speak English. And then to their surprise, it's really, really big that they see me fluently speak. And not only that, but sometimes people in the community learn who I am in the community, and they're like, I had no idea you were doing all of this for our community. Because I'm not just serving the Latino community, I also serve other identities, other communities. And it just really shows that I have this power of like, I could play this game, you know, I could play the game of like, I don't understand you, or I don't want to speak English, but then at the same time, I do understand and I could speak that and defend myself. So I feel like that really has given me power now as an adult, but as a child, you don't really know.
Okay, so the next question, Mariela, how has your cultural background or family history influenced how you understand independence?
Well, I think just growing up in a household with multiple generations and being the oldest has really taught me how to become very independent. Like that is like, for many Latino families, being the oldest, you have to learn to be independent. You also have to learn to like support your family, which is usually your parents, your siblings. So I feel like that really, my family culture really brought me to become more independent and also support my community. And that's something that I continue to teach my 4 kids. So like, you need to be independent. Don't expect anyone to do anything for you. You need to look out for yourself. That's like the key word. And I think that's something that my parents both taught me, that I have to learn for myself and I have to find that independence. And just not have to count or expect someone to care for me, that I have to look for myself at all times, and I have to do things for myself. If I have a dream or a project that's coming up, then I have to be the one that, takes that step forward and moves forward and just wait and see what life brings you. Like clearly that's part of like where you start walking that path of like, where do I move on? And I think that's just that independency that I have brought. It really reflects back to my family. And that's something that I want to continue to teach my kids as well. Like you gotta be you, and you gotta walk the right path that you want, not what I want, not what other people want, but just be you and show that you're independent and that you can move forward.
Thank you. Are there stories from your community that are often overlooked or not widely understood?
I think there's several holidays that are usually considered as Mexican holidays or traditional for our community. And I think that's something that I want to continue to share my knowledge with our community, that there's holidays that we don't celebrate. And then there's other really important holidays for us that we really want to continue to share the importance. And a great example is Cinco de Mayo. Like my family, many other Latino families, we don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo. But instead, we do celebrate our country, our home country, Independence Day. And most of them are usually in September, especially Mexico is in September. So that's something that I always share. And I'm really grateful that my friend here, Antonio Huerta, has this celebration at Springfield City Hall every year, El Grito, where we celebrate our independence of Mexico, and that I have that opportunity to bring my kids to these events so that they're more aware of. So that's just one great example of like what I continue to see in my community. And also we're trying to educate our community who doesn't understand why we don't celebrate certain holidays.
Okay, thank you. So Natalia, how has your cultural background or family history influenced how you understand independence?
Yeah, so my family had always pushed for me to achieve things above and beyond. And a lot of that was working by myself to achieve those things. And they really taught me self-reliance. My mom was single, being a single mother off and on for most of our lives. And watching her go through that has also showed me that the most important person in your life is yourself. And sorry. Being self-reliant, it's a skill. And I've seen a lot of people personally in my own family struggle with the ability to be alone, the ability to do things by yourself. Being reliant on either a man or, like a husband, a boyfriend, an ex, to feel purpose. And it's just never been me. I'm happy to be self-reliant. I do almost everything by myself. And I feel like because of that, it's really boosted my confidence. It's boosted how I think, I wouldn't say my talents, but skills that I have. Leadership is built on being able to be comfortable with yourself. And in my community, in the Black community, having to go through racial things by myself without an outlet in my own family, because while I could help you with obviously most of my problems, they had never experienced racism. My siblings are all white as well. So having to deal with racial problems on my own gave me more skills on independence, and realizing that just because I'm alone. Just because I'm alone doesn't mean isn't like a flaw, isn't a fault. But that did rely on, doing my own research into racism. But that has given me a lot of insight on my community and made me want to explore more. I'm doing a minor in Black Studies at the UO to spread more awareness. And yeah.
Okay. Are there stories from your community that are often overlooked or not widely understood?
Yeah, so I think one of the major problems that our community faces is microaggressions, which I have faced a lot of. But part of what I did in high school, being the president of the Black Student Union, was I held a moment for students to talk about their grievances of, being at Springfield High School, because there wasn't a lot of Black students there either. And I heard a lot of the same stories where white students or white teachers would make really off comments to them, and they couldn't explain why it was so comments to them. And when we would talk to our advisor, he would let us know that was because it had racial undertones to it. And whether or not that was intentional didn't really matter. But we realized a lot of students and staff did not know how to speak about or speak to Black people. And because of this, we did quite a few assemblies, or 2 assemblies, and a lot of slides during Black History Month, spreading awareness about certain things that people say to us and why they're wrong. But I still see it in my day-to-day life. At work, people ask me weird questions, and I feel like awareness to that is something really important for people of Springfield who are not Black to hear. And it's a mission of mine as well, is to kind of not call out, because I do realize that people don't understand certain questions are weird. Like, a question I get a lot at work is my hair real? And I'm like, why wouldn't it be real? Are you asking to find a wig? Are you asking if it's early, natural color? And I get that almost every single day. And I don't think they're intentional in being weird about it, but I don't see my straight hair blonde coworkers being asked if their hair is real, So it's stuff like that that I think really harms our community, because if we do react, if we're like, why are you asking me that? We are painted as the aggressor. So that's something that I really want to work on in the community.
You said your siblings are white, your mother is white, and your family that you grew up with is white. And Amy was asking you about stories that are overlooked or not widely understood. I'm just curious about, what is the experience like growing up in a home when you're kind of walking through all these, societally you're Black, right? And then you go home, and how do you unpack that in a house where there are no Black people?
It was really hard. As when I was younger, we just didn't really talk about race, and I think I said before, it was kind of harmful because I had to experience racism without knowing what it was. But when I got older, they really embraced me being Black. My siblings are mostly older, although I have one younger sister. And they kind of learned through me in a way. My experiences kind of shaped their ideals growing older. They're all very strong activists, and so is my mom. But I do believe part of the reason they are like that is because of them having to adapt to the experiences that I was kind of telling them that I was experiencing at school or just out and about. So it was hard, especially when I was younger, because I could kind of tell they didn't really know what to say to me, because they never had to go through racism. They never had to, and so I couldn't blame them for not giving me like a solid answer on what to do. I mean, they could go to school, they could do all this stuff, but not having a Black person that I could talk to that would understand his experiences, I think kind of harmed me in my formative years. But I love them, and I applaud that they did try harder to become an advocate for me and try to sympathize with my experiences. But yeah.
Well, what has your experience been like living in Oregon, or a rural community like Junction City?
Yeah. So I talked about it a little bit already. But I would love to say that it's been great. I mean, a lot of it has been great. I don't live anywhere else. Oregon is my home, and I love the area. I love the culture of Oregon. But as a Black person specifically, it is really hard to live in Oregon. Aside from no vitamin D most of the year. It is really hard trying to find a community when it seems like there is none, although there is, they're hidden. So it's been rough in that sense, but in the sense of living in a beautiful, beautiful area, that's been great. But I think now it's honestly really great. I spend most of my time in Eugene, and there are a good amount of Black students at the University of Oregon who do try to make a difference, even though a lot of them aren't even from Oregon. The Black student union is very populated. We have a Black cultural center that is always popping after hours, like at 5 or like 7. They have so many events there. So I think now it's honestly gone way, way better being an adult, being at the UO. But I think still, as a child growing up in Oregon, being Black, there is some work that has to be done. But overall, I do love Oregon, and I can't see myself being somewhere else.
I guess I'm going to ask you to just expound a little further in what ways that you have felt welcomed or challenged in building a sense of belonging.
Okay, so in the ways I felt welcome, even in the times where I was having a lot of racism against me at school, I did make a really good community of white female students who would help me and rally behind me. And one of them is still my best friend till this day. We've been best friends for like 12 years now. But so they would help uplift me in those moments where I was feeling judged and having prejudice against me. Obviously in high school, I had a really great Black teacher who helped me foster a community with other Black students at Springfield. And I met a lot of great people in college, great Black students in college, who I want to meet more of in the fall when I join the Black Student Union. I felt challenges quite a bit in trying to explore my culture. I, especially in middle school, it was really hard for me to fit in because it was really edgy time in life where a lot of the middle schoolers would say that the weird things to me, tell me that I wasn't acting Black enough, ask me if they could say slurs, if I gave them approval to do that on their video games or whatever they wanted to do. And because of that, I kind of retreated. I stopped kind of feeling like I should identify with the Black community. I would straighten my hair. I started acting different to fit in. And that wasn't a very sustainable way of life. I was really depressed. I felt like I could not be myself. But I grew through that. I realized that when people think about me, or think that I should act, or think how I should do certain things. That's not my business. What my business is what I want to do and who I want to be. And when I started thinking that way and being more confident, I felt that I belonging here.
Obviously, you're very beautiful and your hair is gorgeous. Mariela, I'd like to ask you the same questions. What has your experience been like living in Oregon or a rural community like Junction's?
Can I just do a time check? It's I think we're doing it well, but just want it's sorry.
Well, like I had mentioned before, I did live in Fresno. So I have that experience of living in a community that's really like close, small. And when I lived there for maybe a year, I don't even recall. I was young. It really felt welcoming. I never felt any type of racism there or discrimination. I think our family was really welcome. I also started seeing more Latino students and parents in the community and just more neighborhoods that look like me. So that's where I started to see a little bit of that identity and just feeling like I belonged somewhere and that I was not just left out. Unfortunately, when I moved to Springfield, once again, like I had mentioned earlier, I became that one individual Latino student in the classroom, and literally my whole family was the only Latino family in Springfield for a very long time. And I don't know if that was similar in every other elementary school, but in the elementary school that I went, that really was my experience for a very long time. And my grandma lived down the street from the school, and she was a homeowner, and all of our neighbors were white. So that's something that I continue to see throughout my years of school here until back in high school, where I started connecting more with Latino students, the Multicultural Student Association, and then I started seeing, oh, okay, there's more Latino students living where I live. And it was the same neighborhood that I grew up as in elementary. So it was really a shock to see that our community would just like stay inside their home or gather in public spaces that felt welcoming. And once again, we would see that our community didn't feel welcome to be going out. And I think that's something that we continue to see still up to today. I continue to see that in our community, that experience of living here in Oregon is you really don't see a neighborhood for Latino families. And something that I saw when I was living in Denver, Colorado, is like you knew where the Latino community lived. There was like specific streets or specific area where the Latino community lived. And here in Oregon, we're really spread out. We don't all live in the same streets. We all live in different places. It's not just like one central place. And so it's just been this experience of back and forth of like what I lived in Colorado and what I lived here in Oregon that really continues to show that every neighborhood is very different. And even now that I'm a mother of 4 and raising them in Springfield as well, like I can tell you right now that I think we're 3 families down my street, like 3 Latino families down my street, and the majority of other people are elderly, Caucasian, most of them. And I think there's one other identity that I've seen. It's a mixed house of like different communities, and I still don't know if that's where they live or they just show up and gather, but we really haven't really seen that much.
In what ways have you felt welcomed or challenged in building a sense of belonging here?
I think I grew up here feeling really welcome and belonging. I grew up here, so I really knew all the teachers, all my friends, the neighborhood, always identify us and knew where we lived. Many years we lived in this one little house. So I feel like I felt really belonging because I grew up here. I knew my neighborhood. I knew the neighbors. I knew the people at the grocery stores. Like these were the spaces I would always show up with my family, and we were always welcome. I think that the challenge now or currently right now is that sometimes we don't feel like we belong right now. And I continue to see that. I continue to feel that sometimes. It's like I could go to the grocery and someone will look at you and you don't know what they're thinking about you. Or maybe, like I mentioned, I speak with my kids in Spanish and someone looks at me and I don't know if I feel like I belong or that's appropriate, but I continue to show up and continue to tell my kids, it's all right, we can speak any language. We have the freedom to do so. We have the privilege to be bilingual, and that's something that I continue to tell my kids. This makes a huge difference, maybe for another family or maybe for us. And at the long run, this also gives us a lot of opportunities to different doors, to different job opportunities, to support our community in one way or another, and volunteering opportunities as well. So I feel like, personally, I feel like I belong here, and maybe it's just me because I grew up here, and I can tell you the names of streets, and I can tell you, yes, go here, go there. I just feel like I really belong because I grew up here since I was 2 years old. But sometimes I do feel like I don't belong just because the way people look at me, or once again, we're gonna go back to like the assumptions that people make, that I'm not from here, that I don't belong, that I'm just one other person coming here to this country.
Okay. Now we have just one question, Mariela. Where do you see gaps between the promise of freedom and what people actually experience today?
That's a difficult one. I think it's really hard right now. Just living, I think in the last, a year and a half now, with so much events happening locally and people being targeted by speaking or the color, speaking Spanish or by the color of your skin. Our community is being targeted right now. And this is not just statewide, not locally, it's nationwide, and it's really sad. It's really sad to be going through this in our community currently. And we really don't know if we're gonna move forward. I think for many years, I was admired to see that nationwide, statewide, we were progressing of being more diverse, of welcoming other people, and just being happy that people were different and that we were just welcoming people with like arms out and celebrating other identities. And right now it's just hard. A lot of people are being not celebrated. They're being pointed out. They are being excluded, and just being targeted, and it's not fair. It really is not fair. It's not something that I want to see right now. Being a mother of four, I always think about what's going to happen to my children next. You know, are they going to be the next target? Being born here in Springfield, Oregon, all four, how are they going to be treated? What are they going to have to deal with? And I just grew up where society was really welcoming for many, many years. And there's been this shift of like things haven't changed and not everyone's doesn't feel safe, one. And the other thing is that we're not feeling like we belong here again. And I don't know, it's just really hard right now to see what's happening nationwide.
Okay, Natalia, where do you see gaps between the promise of freedom and what people actually experience today?
It's all over. But related to our community, if you've seen the local news, people are being discriminated against. They're being tackled. Protesters who are peacefully protesting are being met with violence from Eugene PD, Springfield. It's really upsetting to see. Oregon takes pride in being a accepting state, but we see so many injustices every single day. And when we try to, spread awareness and we try to organize, we're being met with more and more violence. And it's upsetting, and it gives people, they lose their hope. I lost a lot of hope in Eugene and Springfield because of the situations that I've been seeing. I am really happy to see, though, people who I knew from school running in the local elections and creating youth coalitions to try to keep helping our communities, the Black community, the Latino community, and to continue empowering us against all the injustice that we are seeing right now. Sorry, I hope you could hear me. But we do have a lot of work to do. I want to be a part of that work. I'm striving to be a part of that work. Yeah.
Natalia, what have you learned from interacting with people from different backgrounds or communities?
Yeah, so I love to learn how to aid my peers in their own issues they're having within the community, their communities. In high school, I helped host a multicultural assembly for the Black Student Union, the Latino Student Union, and the Asian Student Union. And I just love learning what I could do to better help the problems they were facing, whether that be in the school district, outside the school district. At the UO, there is a coalition that helps people against ICE. I've signed up to get alerts for when campus that they had to lobby in the school to, in fact, notify students about it because they were refusing to. So I want to keep learning on how to aid my neighboring communities, other minority groups who are being heard, the LGBTQ community, the Latino community, Asian communities. Yeah.
What helps build understanding or trust between communities?
I think one of the best ways to build community and trust within other minority groups is to find something we can all relate to. And we can all relate to the injustices that are happening against all of us right now. And I think being together, protesting together, finding ways that we can help each other is the main way. There has been a lot of I've heard from certain people that sometimes minority groups, clash, and I think that's what people want us to do, is they want us to clash, they want us to be against each other when we need to uplift each other, because we are not the enemies. There is a common enemy that is against us, all of us, and I think if we can put aside our intergroup fighting, we can be really strong, and we can win, and we can build a better justice system for us all. And so I think finding something we can relate to and using that to become stronger is important.
Thank you. Mariela, I have the same questions for you. What have you learned from interacting with people from different backgrounds or communities?
I think that's something that I have learned within the last couple of years is that we all have similarities. In every community, whether it's something that has to do with food or music or arts or anything, even one specific holiday, that we have some similarities there. And then we also have differences of how we celebrate or how we do things. So I think that that's something really important to recognize, that in our own cultural values, there's a lot of things that are very similar, and that there's small little differences that really also make us want to learn from each other. And I feel like that's something that we continue to see. I'm really happy to be working in collaboration with many other identities and continue to support many different people from different backgrounds and just say, I'm here, I have this knowledge and I can share this information. And maybe I understand you more than you think, we might be going through similar situations. And navigating is the similar way that we are navigating. We have the same barriers many times. And it's like, this is the way that we have confront this, or this is how we have moved on. And I think that's something that's really important, that we can really work together and just identify that we're going through the same thing, not just one person, but sometimes it's a huge community that is going through the same thing.
What do you think helps build understanding or trust between communities?
I think that one of the biggest things that I've seen in my community and building that trust in our community is that you really need to sit down to listen, what the need is, what the want is, and just be there, be present, and show that you care. And not only that, but I think the other piece that is really important is that you acknowledge what that other person is sharing. And you say, yeah, like I might not understand you 100% fully, but I see it. I see what you're seeing, or I see what you're going through. And just really identify that, I think really brings that trust in the community. And not only that, but just being present. I think that's the key word, being present, showing up for those people who feel they need someone. They need someone to just hold their hand. That's one of the things that I continue to see in our community. And one of the other things that I see is, that collaboration between working in teams. It really brings that trust into the community, where maybe you're just holding one person, but then you bring other allies into different spaces and you say, you know what, let me introduce you to my colleague, and talk about who they are, and just bring that warm hand off to people who don't feel safe, maybe many of the times, and that really need to build that trust again in the community or with people. I think that's really important.
Okay, Mariela, just one question. In what ways have you or your community supported others or contributed to making your community stronger?
I think one of the things that I continue to do throughout my high school years and even now is just be a leader in my community. Just really stepping up and saying, this is what the wants and needs are for our community, and speaking up for the whole community. Once we know what we have identified as like key points that really are needed. And one of the things that I did under my organization was, do a lot of advocacy in the schools, do a lot of advocacy in the city, in the county, and say, you know, we need more information translated into Spanish. We need more bilingual staff. We need more people that look like us in different spaces so that the community can feel safe to approach agencies and organizations. And also at the same time, just mention that really opens that door to that cultural prospect, and that sometimes it doesn't always cover everything. Once again, I think we always have to go back to who do we trust in the community, and who does our leaders trust in the community? Because if our community leaders don't trust certain spaces or organizations, it's most likely that the community as a whole won't reach out to those spaces as well. So that's really important that we continue to do a lot of that advocacy and that leadership work in our community.
Thank you. Natalia, in what ways have you or your community supported others or contributed to making your community stronger?
Yeah, so I've spoken about it a bit already, but when I was in my high school's Black Student Union last year, and I joined when I was a sophomore, we loved to make multicultural assemblies or invite the Latino Student Union to sit in with us and talk about the problems that they were experiencing in our school and seeing what we could do to make things better. Now I do similar things. I have a lot of friends who are in different minority groups that I talk to about what they're going through, and I see the ways I can help them. When I was in my Black Student Union, one thing that I'm really proud of that we did is that we networked with the Black Student Union over at Thurston High School, a high school that was really notorious for the amount of racism that people who were not white were experiencing there. And we did a group field trip to Portland to learn more about Black history in Portland and Oregon overall, because they were not given a lot of the same experiences as the Springfield community was. And though we had a lot of the same local like community Black events we were going to, they were experiencing a lot worse things than we were at the moment. So that made our community a lot stronger. And I've seen since I've left high school, they've been doing a lot better as well. Networking within the groups. Yeah.
Natalia, if we think of independence as something that is still evolving, what would a more inclusive version of it look like to you?
A more inclusive version of independence would be giving people equal access to achieving anything that they want to achieve for themselves. Self-reliance is really, really important, as I said earlier. So people with physical and mental impairments, people who are in minority groups, all of it, they should be able to have the same experiences as every other person in every single space. And it's obviously not like that in the slightest. We have so much work to do as a community, as a country, as a world. But even just the smaller things, even just seeing where we can fix maybe something isn't accessible to somebody, seeing where we can fix that as a community. I just took a class about disability awareness, and we had to audit buildings in our schools, and so many of them were just slightly inaccessible to so many students. And seeing that opened my eyes, because I personally am not somebody who has an impairment, but I know so many people who do, and thinking of them having to find a different way to get to class was really, really upsetting. So I think coming together and finding ways that we can help each other achieve self-reliance and achieve things, independence, it's something we do. It's something that's like really important.
Thank you. Marta, I'd like to ask you the same question. If we think of independence as something that's still evolving, what would a more inclusive version of it look like to you?
I think that's something I continue to do a lot of advocacy around, is giving people the right to speak and see what they would like to see and what their needs are, and try to meet those needs. Something I continue to do in my community is, like Natalia had mentioned, is just be more inclusive with families raising children with developmental disability, and then just giving them that opportunity as well for them to be who they are and that they feel welcome. And I feel like, once again, it's just going back to like, why doesn't everyone have the same opportunities? Why doesn't there is accommodations to meet that person's needs or wants? It just really reflects of how much we need to be more mindful of what other people really need. And that's something that I continue to share. Because sometimes there's so many bright people in our community, and maybe it's just one little thing that they need of support, and they don't have it. They don't have it to show or shine that charm they have.
Okay, the last set of questions. Mariella, what gives you hope when you think about the future of your community?
I think something that I'm really proud of is raising 4 wonderful little kids. And they get to see me on a daily basis doing a lot of advocacy, leadership work in our community. And I think that really brings me hope that my kids will follow maybe my steps in a little way or not in the community in the next future years, and that they will continue to be that future leaders in our community, and that they will speak up and say what's needed for themselves. Because I always think about, like, I'm just right now this generation, but my kids are the future generations. And I really want to empower my kids to have that advocacy, that leadership role, and that they make differences as well for themselves, but also for the majority of people who continue to not have someone that looks like them and represent the whole community. And I really want to see that things start changing, you know, like they were a few years ago, and that our community can really come together and make decisions to just make other people feel welcome and belonging, and that things can, you know, move forward versus going backwards.
Thank you. So Natalia, what gives you hope when you think about the future of your community?
What gives me hope is that I already see so many more Black students and Black children in the schools that I had previously walked in and not seen basically a single person who looked like me. And I've seen that they've been making their own communities as well. Pretty recently, I did a panel for Hamlin Middle School for their Black students and multicultural students. And the way the cafeteria was like pretty full, made my heart pretty full. And seeing how happy they were to be together and to have a community together, it healed a little part of me as a child not having that. And I'm just so hopeful that these students will grow to do great things, great activism, and that we will see a bigger Black population in Oregon, in Springfield, in Junction City, wherever, and have it keep growing.
Okay, okay. So here's the last question for Mariella. What is one thing you'd like people to carry with them after this conversation?
I think just to recognize that a lot of people from different backgrounds and identities bring something to this community and positive. That it's not always negative, that there is always good things that everyone can bring to different spaces, and to acknowledge that we can celebrate those small things that they do bring to our community, and just recognize that they are making a change, whether we see it or not every day, but we see it in the long run.
Okay, Natalia, what is one thing you'd like people to carry with them after this conversation?
I'd like people to remember that advocacy is so important in times like these. Find your community and hold them close to you, and find other communities and get them as allies. We have a lot of work to do, and we need to start now. Even small things that you can do, sharing something on social media, educating somebody, small things like that are going to make a difference if we all do it.
Thank you very much, Natalia and Mariela. I want to be like you when I grow up. And can we also give our facilitators a big hand? So now is the time that you've all been waiting for. You need to finish the food, but also, very, very important, anybody that asks a question is going to get a very special Mexican toy. You cannot get that toy anywhere in the world, but here today. So, yeah, he got one already, actually two. So, anybody has a question? For the big prize of one toy, yes, go ahead.
I have a question for Mariela. What is one thing that we sorry guys, sorry.
It's okay.
What is one thing that we need to carry for the future of our generation?
That's a great question. La pregunta del millón, the million dollar question. María.
Muchas gracias, Jesús. Yo creo que lo más importante es traer nosotros quiénes somos. Y yo creo que nuestra identidad es lo más importante. Reconocer y recordarnos quiénes somos nosotros, y también compartir eso con nuestras familias, con nuestros hijos, con nuestros padres, con nuestros hermanos, y recordarles a ellos también quiénes son ellos, y más que nada por qué estamos haciendo lo que estamos haciendo el día de hoy.
Jesús, are you happy with your toys or do you like another toy? ¿Te gustan esos juguetes o quieres otro? Ahorita te ayudamos.
Okay.
Excellent. Anybody else has a question? Anybody and everybody. ¿Alguien más? Okay, Mimi. Oh, Mimi. You're gonna want that lotería.
This is actually for both. So, how have racism or systemic barriers shaped your experience? You probably did already talk about it, but more specifically, what would be the defining moment for you? How you can change.
I will say probably being a Black woman in general, but especially in Oregon, has been so hard. I have been taken out seriously because of not only my race, but also my gender here. And especially by, just men my age, boys my age, growing up, it was like I was like a joke. So that's why I think education and giving people, having a more diverse community is so important for the formative years of all students and boys especially, having empathy for people of other races. And yeah, I've experienced racism in every year of my life. I used to let it define me, but I've grown past that, and now I just use it to be stronger and to educate people.
I think for me, just identifying racism and discrimination, that it's everywhere, whether you see it or not, whether you hear about it or not. I have lived it in many different spaces. And it's hard to know what to do in those scenarios. And I think for me personally, it's now teaching my kids that this is something that does happen, that it can happen to them, even if they're bilingual. And if they were born here, it will happen to them. And that they need to find the right way to approach it and to learn from that as well. And to speak up and say, no, this is not tolerated.
That was Mimi's question. Mimi, what do you want? You're on the top. So next time we see Mimi, she's going to be. Pregunta, question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being so brave and honest and sharing your experiences. My question is going to be quite biased because I'm a psychologist. And both of you talked a lot about mental health without actually saying mental health. I think someone did say depression, so I'll count that. And so I think that my question is really about what could parents do to help their kids have a sense of belonging in a predominantly white state. I think it's going to take a lot of years for that to change in Oregon, for those proportions to switch. But I feel really strongly that parents can be super influential, and both of y'all have talked about that. But if you were to talk to parents, right, that are raising kids here, not just in Eugene, but other parts of Oregon that are maybe even more white, what can parents do to really help them develop that pride for their racial ethnic identity?
I think you can go back to what I just said, just exposing our kids to that idea. And as a parent, that's something that I do. I let my kids know that this is something real. It could happen to them. Just get them more aware of what they could be exposed to. But at the same time, I'm also letting them know that they have a safe space here at home with me to come and tell me what's happening so that I can also maybe help them find ways to find a solution. And that if we can't find a solution, that we can work together, whether it's with the community or with the school, to find a solution for that. And I think the other big piece that I always have brought to my own family is getting them very involved into different community events and being exposed to different communities. My kids always attend, and it's not just because I do this work and I have to go to these events, but I really want my kids to be exposed as much as they can to different cultures so that they can understand different people's background and also not make assumptions, because unfortunately, this can go everywhere. We can make assumptions from anyone in this room, And I don't want to see that. I want to see that we all feel welcome, that we all feel belong. And that my kids can also have that personal experience to have different families and friends and meet new people that could become their maybe friends in the future.
Okay.
My response might be a little bit biased towards interracial families, but I would say making sure to immerse your child in their own culture, and finding other people in that same culture to be around your child, specifically your child's age, maybe researching to see what schools have a certain demographic and putting them in those schools, finding activities that are like hosted by Black organizations in your town, which I did go to once as a child, and just making sure your child remembers that their identity is important and educating them about racism young in ways that are, good for their age. Because that was one of the most harmful things that I was not taught was what exactly racism is and why people will judge me for my race and what's going on. So just making sure your child is educated and immersed in their culture so the doubts that they may have are minimal, and just reassuring that their identity is important and it's beautiful and it's something they should be proud of.
Homeschool. That's my answer. Homeschool. That's another, that's 6 or 7, I can't remember. 7 with a child in their 30s. I say homeschool.
They say not just one, but 2. So, el que gustes, los que gustes. Más preguntas, more questions. Okay, question over here.
I'm asking this question for Cece here. If you were president, what would be like the first thing or change that you would think?
Wow. All right, Natalia, you have the magic.
As president, one of the first things I would do would be to apologize to every minority community that our government in many years has done, every single thing that we have done to degrade and just what all the things we've done to every single community that we have. That's my first act. And then my second act would be to do whatever I can to change and fix the awful ways we do stuff in this country. The justice system is probably my first area of change, I think.
If I was president, I think we would definitely have to give an apology to all the people who have been affected in the last couple of years. And also tell them that they belong here and that they're welcome and that they make this country beautiful.
And your choice is? Más preguntas, more questions. It has to be. Jesús, bravo, Jesús.
Esta pregunta es para Mariela. Como una mamá de 4 niños o niñas, ¿cuál es la mejor responsabilidad como tú as una mamá que, no sé, ¿cuál es una responsabilidad para un mamá de un hijo como tiene la discapacidad que vas a, no sé, pero si tienes una poder como un niño de discapacidad, ¿cuál poder tienes y como qué?
Gracias, Jesús. Yo creo que una de las cosas muy importantes para mí, y algunos lo saben, es que también tengo hijos con discapacidad. Entonces, una de las cosas que a mí me gustaría hacer para mis hijos es seguir diciéndoles que son hermosos y que ellos pueden lograr lo que ellos gusten, siempre con mi apoyo. Y obviamente que hay una comunidad que se los va a apoyar también. Ellos pueden sobresalir todos sus desafíos y que no se deben de sentir menos por recibir apoyos adicionales o acomodaciones, porque la verdad, todos en este cuarto ahorita necesitamos apoyos en un momento de nuestra vida, así que es muy importante recordarle a nuestros hijos que son son lo más hermoso de nuestra vida y que mamá siempre va a estar aquí para apoyarlos y que las personas con discapacidad no se deben de sentir menos porque ellos tienen unos talentos especiales que las personas típicas también a veces no tienen. Any more questions?
Más preguntas. Maybe we have time for one more question. Going once, awesome. Don't get to go once.
My question, I also grew up in Springfield and went to the public schools there. My question is, did you feel supported by teachers and other adults at the school or in your life who were supportive of your identities and understanding of that? Did you feel like you had that support at school or did you need more of that?
Sir.
Working on my steps here. One step at a time.
I can tell you that when I was in elementary, I didn't find that support in teachers or anyone in my school. I did start seeing that when I was in middle school and high school, where I got to really see a little bit more diverse within my teachers, classmates, and that's where I really found that, there was people that really wanted to help us and that they really trusted that we had the ability to do certain things. And I think that sometimes that's something that unfortunately some teachers don't tell you. They don't tell you that they see something in you that you can achieve. And I think when you come across people who really identify with you, that you really look up to them and say, I want to be like them. And I think that's where I pursued my career in early childhood education. I wanted to teach very young children to see potential in them and say, you're beautiful and you can achieve many things with my support, with your family support, with the community support, and that you're not alone in this path. And that once you graduate high school, you can do anything you want. And that you really need to show people that you can do it.
I had one teacher, one principal, growing up who I would attribute to all of my activism that I do now. My most recent one, Mr. Clint at Springfield High School. It's the reason why I decided to join Black Student Union. He helped me with every single step that I took, and even now, it's somebody who I reach out to when I need guidance. I had a Black principal for a short time in elementary school, and after I've recently learned about what being Black entails, we had an assignment about Martin Luther King, and we had to make an essay or a song regarding I Have a Dream. And I did so, and she brought me into the office and talked to me about being Black and
the fear it can bring in children and herself for her children, that she had a Black male child, knowing how America treats Black men. She was scared for them, and that my song made her cry and give her a lot of hope for the future. And I think that teachers are some of the most important people in our society, and they help students so much. Very similar in how parents do. It's like a second parent to these children, especially in elementary school when you're seeing them every single day. Sometimes almost as much as you see your parent when they're working. And so I think teachers being educated on how to help certain students of all identities or all students of all identities, and using that to connect with them is so important. And I applaud teachers that have that achieve that and do that for their students.
I just say this is why I said homeschool, at least for the elementary school years, so that you can establish a firm foundation of self in your child before you send them out into the world. You don't want little ones, especially in cultural minorities in a very homogenous place, having their identity defined 8 hours a day, 5 days a week by people who have no real investment, other children who have no real investment, adults who have no real investment in your culture, in your child. Homeschool, at least in the elementary school years. That is solid advice.
Thank you everyone for your questions, your participation, your patience. I know we're a little bit behind time, but this was it for today. If we can give our panelists one more hand. And our facilitators, Irene and Amy. Thank you very much. I have not forgotten your you want to talk, okay? Well, you can come up and grab the one that you like. But I wanted to ask before we close off, I didn't mean it. There's plenty of food, so feel free to take food home. But also, if it is okay and you're comfortable, if you take a picture with all of us, do a group picture before Mimi nos regaña. She's the photographer extraordinaire. And maybe we can do the picture up here in front. Acá si se vienen conmigo. Y I think you guys are perfect there. Of course, this is totally optional.
Oh, okay, we just sit down, they're gonna stay.
And then, Mindy, I'll turn it off to you. You don't want to talk about.
We're gonna take the table out.
Do you want us to stand?
You can see it, but we'll take it up.
This is,
We're gonna move that.
So also, the Springfield Public Library hosts 9 weeks of outdoor multicultural programs in partnership with Comunidad, NAACP, Native Youth Wellness, a variety of different communities. You can get a flyer up here. They're free to everyone, and people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities come and join us. So please come visit us in Springfield. Thank you all. Good night.
Si gustan acompañarnos para la foto del recuerdo. Kenji, you wanna come for the picture?
I just got video, a series of different things we can do for psychological first-aid. There is a video they want to send on Oregon Health Sciences person on how to manage and help people who are disabled during an evacuation. So I'll send that to you. Yes.
Okay.
Three. And then one.
Okay, are you ready for Goofy?
Goofy, yeah.
1, 2, 3.
That's a good one. De banana.
Yes. And children, before you leave, you're welcome to grab a toy here. I don't want to take him home because I'm going to be playing all night long. Sé que ya no hay muchos, pero quien guste un juguete, los niños y los niños de, no sé si niños de corazón, ¿sí, verdad? Ese es el valero. El juguete me gusta. Muchas gracias, cuídense mucho, nos vemos hasta la próxima.